dark continent? You're telling me there are lands beyond the ice wall with no sunlight?
Listen, don't take my word for it. Take Jonathan Hemington's. I mean, hell, he's the one who streamed it live on the dark web in 2020. Guy worked for a private research institute for aerial engineering. Developed these just incredible aircrafts, undetectable from radars, incredible fuel efficiency, allowing for flight durations that could last weeks. Little did anybody know the guy was just obsessed with the idea of these outer lands, the ice wall, and one night he boarded a jet with a Starlink and his streaming equipment and headed directly down to Antarctica. He figured if he streamed right away, he'd be intercepted, so he waited until he was about midway through the continent, and as he started the stream, hundreds of people watched as he literally flew straight over what appeared as an enormous ice barrier. After hours and hours of continuation, passing over several different unidentified landmasses, he stopped on one of them to get a night's rest and continue on the next morning. But during that next day of flight, this was where things had taken a peculiar turn. As the sun eventually went down during flight, he wanted to wait until it came back up to get a safe landing, but as the hours went by, it never did. Eventually, due to fatigue, he was forced to land onto this dark continent, and little did he know this would be his last stop. Listen, this place he was in was nothing like we'd ever seen, okay? The environmental factors clearly showed this land had never been exposed to sunlight, pure darkness, and instead of trees, there were just these rock-textured spires that shot up into the sky. The final moments of the stream showed a horrific encounter that he'd had. As he began explaining, he was seeing some kind of tall figure, something human-like, but strangely different, pale with glowing white eyes. And as he'd called out to it, the camera would fall to the ground moments later. The stream would ultimately end just moments after this being picked up the camera and looked directly into the lens. Jonathan Hemington had not been heard from since. But look, I'm just going to go ahead and say, this is a joke for entertainment only.
So you're telling me this guy flew over the ice wall with a jet he'd stolen from the research facility he worked for, and not only found this dark continent with zero sunlight, but encountered an anatomically derivative species of humans.
Exactly.
And because he allegedly streamed it live, you just take it as irrefutable evidence that it's true.
Not at all. Look, after I'd went down this rabbit hole, I realized that I just had to go ahead and see it for myself. And I mean, look, say what you want, but John Hemington was never seen again, okay? Which would make sense based on the horrific events that his stream ended with. But look, I found out the exact research center that he worked for. Okay, I knew that if I wanted to get over that ice wall, that company's jets were the only thing that'd do it.
You're a pilot?
Excuse me? Of course I am. Why the hell do you think I take such an interest in this type of stuff? Look, regardless, I find the address of the research and development center that John worked for, okay, where they have these privately patented jets. Okay, and I mask up like I'm hitting a lick back in '85 and make my way over to the facility. In my mind, I'm ready to get over that ice wall and land on that dark continent tonight.
So what happened? You stole a jet to see if there were really lands beyond the ice wall, to see if the things John Hemington spoke of, the dark continent, the pantheons, actually existed.
Exactly. Look, I had nothing to lose. And so I'm standing outside a maximum security fence at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, masked up. I'm just trying to spot any possible security, but I cut the fence and make my way in. And as I shattered the glass to get into the building, this alarm just starts blaring, and I'm thinking, hell, if there wasn't security on shift yet, they're definitely on their way now, right? And so I'm just sprinting down the hall, hearts racing, until I find the aerial control department, and I just grab the first badge I see off the aircraft key card repository. And as I sprint back out to the flight line to get on one of these jets, I see the facility's security personnel just flushing the place. And I mean, I've got good distance, but they're on my tail. And so as I jump inside a jet and start initializing the engine, I'm seeing security literally just sprint head on in my direction. But I mean, look, I wasn't stopping. I was in too deep at this point. Where it really had gotten out of control, right, was as I start to take off down the airstrip, I see one of the other jets behind me start to rev up. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, I hope these people are ready for the jet chase of the century, because I ain't landing until I'm 1,000 miles beyond the ice wall.
You're out of your mind, man.
Look, it gets to a point, I'm flying south over the Antarctic Ocean. I've got 2 or 3 of these other jets behind me. They're kind of radioing me on the traffic control, just threatening me, begging me to land. I'm saying back to them, like, just trust me. You guys don't understand, right? Like, we've been lied to. Trust me, you'll see what's ahead. They're going, buddy, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh, we're just going to come back up around the other side of the globe. They're telling me we're going to hit the Indian Ocean, Australia, right? They were thinking in terms of the global model. But this is where it gets crazy. As they realize I ain't stopping, one of the other pilots says to me, he goes, listen, You land that thing now, we sign an NDA and go home. Act like this never happened. But go ahead, continue forward if you must, but just know it's a one-way ticket. You ain't ever coming back.
What did you do?
What I set out to. I could see the wall by this point. There was no turning back. And as I fly over the wall, the other jets behind me just hit wide pivots to turn around, and the pilot radios me one last time. He goes, "Crazy son of a bitch. Good luck, kid." And I mean, look, I just soar off into no man's land. I'm baffled. I'm seeing land masses that have never been accounted for. The navigational equipment on the jet is no longer working, but I know as long as I stay due south, I'll reach Panthea. I'll reach the Dark Continent. And lo and behold, 30 or so hours later, sun goes down and it never comes back up. I start to drop my altitude to get a better view, and there she was. I saw the dark lands. I saw everything that Hemington had spoke of. Look, I landed the jet on a clear landscape, and before I even had a chance to get out, there they were. The Pantheons Hemington spoke of, stepping in slowly. I mean, they were literally surrounding the aircraft. You know, I'm thinking, what the hell are they doing, right? And as I'm getting ready to power up the engine, I can't move a muscle.
What do you mean?
I couldn't move if I'd wanted to. I believe they'd had some sort of control over my central nervous system. Their biofield was just so disproportionately powerful.
That's impossible.
Listen, when an electromagnetic broadcast is strong enough, it can influence another. Okay, it's like an EMP on your nervous system.
What happened?
As they got closer, it got stronger. I felt them probing my mind, wanting to know who I was, where I came from. They saw everything.
What did they want?
My hands started moving against my will and pulled the lever to release the airlock on the door of the jet. 8 or 9 of them came on board.
My God.
As my hands went through the motions of initializing takeoff, I realized what they wanted.
You brought them back here.
At that point, I had no choice.
Not only did you fly over the ice wall in a stolen jet, you found the Dark Continent, encountered the Pantheons, and got electromagnetically compelled to allow them to board the aircraft and bring them back here. I mean, look, you said you flew the jet for 30 hours beyond the ice wall. Everybody in the comments is kind of getting on your case about that.
Understandably. I mean, look, people like to gloss over the facts, right? The details. I mean, go back and listen. I said that the research and development center I took this jet from was working with unprecedented design patents. Okay, the fuel efficiency on these things would never be publicized, but regardless, look, as I'm flying back in, right after leaving the Dark Continent with these Pantheons on board with me, you know, this is where things tense up. As soon as I get back within the ice wall, I've got 5 or 6 fighter jets behind me. I'm thinking, you know, this must be government or something. Obviously didn't want to let me re-enter the inner world after having discovered the reality of the outer lands. The Pantheons on board kind of shift their focus off of me and onto the imminent threat of these other jets on our tail, right? At which point I hear one of the other pilots radioing in over the traffic control. He goes, "You know how this ends, kid. I told you once you left, there was no coming back." And as I hear the lock-on warning start going off, time just kind of slowed down.
They were going to send missiles.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, you know, let them do it, right? I mean, it would prevent these Pantheons from entering our world. Realized I had probably moments to make a move. And as the incoming threat detection alert system starts going haywire, off pure instinct, I punch the airlock release lever, grab my parachute from the cabin, and with maybe a quarter of a second to spare, I just dive headfirst out of the jet. And I am just free-falling right over the Antarctic Ocean. I feel the vibration of the impact from my jet above getting hit, and I kind of wait to pull my chute, you know, until I'm totally out of the visibility of those jets that were tracking me, right? And I'm just shocked. I'm thinking about everything I've seen, everything that I now know, praying to God that those Pantheons don't survive that impact, right? But as I'm descending just onto an open body of water, I spot what looks like a massive naval ship, and I'm thinking, well, hell, I'll take my chances landing on them. As soon as I do, I'm surrounded by the crew. The naval sergeant confronts me and says, "Boy, what the hell are you doing parachuting out in the middle of the Antarctic Ocean?" And I'm panicking, right? I mean, little does he know I just evaded his partners up in the sky. But I say back to him, I go, "Oh, you know, I just got a little off course. I come around here with my buddy all the time for skydiving." He says to me, he goes, "Well, bad timing. Could have gotten yourself seriously injured. We just got done eliminating a hostile threat just a few miles south." And my stomach drops at that point. I'm thinking, holy crap, you know, he's talking about me. Long story short, I get a rescue boat to take me back up to North America, and
Did the Pantheons survive the impact?
buddy, look, not only did they end up surviving, they tracked us all the way back up to North America.
You got intercepted by intelligence agents for not only flying over the ice wall, but bringing this derivative species of predatory humans back with you.
Like I said, I thought I had shook them in Antarctica, but they followed me back north. There's no easy way to say this, but the weeks that followed after I returned to the States, the things that had begun happening made it clear to me. The Pantheons were in fact among us.
What kind of things?
Countrywide blackouts. Okay, you might remember this from back in '98 when the Midwest was separated from the Eastern grid, okay?
Of course, the North American ice storm.
Exactly, except it wasn't. It was all the efforts of the Pantheons.
That's not possible.
Listen to me. They were trying to recreate their world, the Dark Continent, here inside of ours. Fast forward, I'm taken into custody by intelligence, and, I'm pretty much convinced my run is over, right? This agent comes in to talk to me, and he says to me, he goes, "You are one dumb son of a bitch." And, the look on his face got me thinking, this is probably a lot worse than power outages. He goes on to explain to me that these people from this dark continent over the past 2 weeks had infiltrated and silently taken over 7 of the most authoritatively crucial departments in the country. By the time he'd even gotten intelligence on it, it was too late. He says to me that the majority of his department is compromised as well, and that he can't even trust if he's talking to the real me. And so, look, he hands me this strange-looking headset device and tells me to put it on for a moment. When I asked him why, he told me that the Pantheon's neural manipulation abilities work through high-frequency manipulation, and that he can't even be sure he's talking to the real me until I do.
So what the hell happened after that?
He told me that if his assumptions are correct, they were going to infiltrate the global cellular frequency infrastructure. They would try and use this to magnify their electromagnetic manipulation and basically seduce the entire world unknowingly.
Jesus Christ, man. Is that what happened? Is that our reality?
Well, not ours particularly, but someone's, yes.
English, please.
Look, I told him, what can we do? Like, how the hell do we fix this? But he just emphasized that it was too late, that this was why they prevent people from even knowing about the ice wall, because of dangers like this. He said to me, unfortunately, at this point, all we can do is save ourselves. He told me that the CIA has had a century-long running project on matter displacement technology, that he's the only one with clearance to the facility. Look, he brings me into a private room and unveils a massive device. It was just round, liquid-like matter. Tells me that it was connected to an ethereal hive mind of cosmic networks. And out of all the other cosmic realities, there are thousands that also have one of these matter displacement devices actively running, one of which will be the new reality we walk into.
You're from a different reality.
Look, we take a good look at each other before we walk through, and I say to him, when we get to the other side, what are you going to do with me? And he's just initiating a self-destruct protocol on the machine before we go through, as he says to me, "Buddy, you compromised an entire timeline. When we arrive to the facility on the other side, I'm going to get a cup of coffee. You're going to go straight to maximum security containment." And so he says to me, "Now let's get the hell out of here, right? The system's self-destruct timer is ticking." And before we walk through, I just lunge at him like my life depends on it, tackling him to the ground as I say to him, "Like you said, millions of people are screwed because of me. Hell, what's one more?" And with about 2 seconds left before the machine destructs, I just jump through it as the sole survivor of the entire timeline.
So this is how you got here.
Of course, but look, it gets worse. When I'd arrived on the other side, the facility was riddled with Pantheons. They'd already found the matter displacement device. They'd already infiltrated this world as well.
You're telling me there are interdimensional matter displacement devices, and that after a predatorial derivative human species emerged from a dark continent beyond the ice wall and seized control of our lands, you and an intelligence agent used it to escape the timeline.
Exactly. Okay, but I bailed on him. He was going to prosecute me once we'd gotten to the other side. So I took out his legs and left him in that timeline. Soon as I get to the other side, my stomach drops. The facility was full of Pantheons, okay? They had clearly already found the matter displacement device and began seizing control of other timelines. They all look at me, and I'm in a state of shock. I'm panicking. I don't know what to do. And within a second, I just fall back and re-emerge myself into the matter displacement device.
You were just going to go to another timeline.
Exactly. Look, like the agent had said, these devices are interdimensionally connected to any reality, which also has one of them actively running, right? Realizing that that timeline had already been infiltrated by the Pantheons, I figured I would just take my chances on another timeline before they got their hands on me. And so moments later, I emerge once again into another reality. This time, luckily, I just see a facility with regular people, but their eyes are in a total state of shock as I step through the device. I'm in a room full of intelligence agents, and they're starting to almost freak out. They get to talking to each other, saying things like, "What have we done?" And one of them quickly says to me, "Sir, don't move. Who the hell are you?" And I'm kind of panicking as well, but I try to de-escalate the situation. I just say, "Listen to me. You people need to turn that machine off immediately." The senior agent says to me, "Turn it off? We just turned it on." I say, "Listen, I understand that, but listen, right? I am from an alternate timeline, okay? These devices are connected to a hive mind. Any reality that also has one of these systems running is able to pass through." And they're all kind of just looking at me with confused expressions. The senior agent goes, "Is that a threat?" I say to him, like, "Listen, you don't understand the gravity of what's going on. A rogue species has gained access to these devices, a species from my timeline, from lands beyond the ice wall. And they are infiltrating other timelines, okay? They could walk through at any second." And at that point, his expression kind of shifts. He says to me, "Beyond the ice wall? What the hell do you know about Zone 7? And as I say to him, "Buddy, I've been there." He slams a lever forward and turns off the matter displacement device and says, "Come with me." I'm walking with him going, "Look, where are you taking me, right?" And he says, "This agency has been lying to him for far too long." He says, "I'm going to Zone 7 and you're coming with me." I say to him, like, "Look, I don't know if we should do that, okay? The things that lie beyond the ice wall, or Zone 7 as you know it, are literally what had gotten us into this mess to begin with, right? The beings on those outer lands are not something we should interact with in this timeline if they hadn't been already." And he's just saying to me like, "Oh, you don't get it, okay? They've been keeping this information classified for eternity. That he'd spent the better part of his career trying to get clearance into Zone 7 and still never has." And basically it becomes clear to me that, this guy was kind of like me. Okay, he was obsessed with knowing what was beyond, and I couldn't really blame him, but he basically just forces me into it. I tell him, "Look, I'll go to the outer lands with you, okay? I'll go to Zone 7, but whatever you do, we cannot land on the Dark Continent." I say, "As far as we know, this timeline is safe. Okay, the people on those dark lands can compromise the integrity of our entire reality if we make contact." He says to me, "We won't make contact." He goes, "I've just got to see it for myself." And deja vu, right? I'm with this agent in a classified aerial vehicle flying straight through Antarctica, straight over the ice wall. He can't believe it, okay? He's in utter shock. I'm praying the guy doesn't pass out on me. And I tell him, "Look, stay calm. Navigation equipment's going to fail any second. Just stay due south and we'll get there. We'll get to the dark lands." Look, I get to talking with him about why he took up such an interest in all this stuff, and this is where things take a pretty diabolical twist. He says to me, he goes, "Oh, well, we've got bases all over Zone 7. He's referring to the outer lands as Zone 7, right? He goes, "We've had these bases in Zone 7 since the dawn of the agency, yet nobody in any of our departments had ever gotten clearance to see them." I'm thinking like, that's strange, but I wouldn't put it past the government, right? Of course they'd have bases out there. I mean, they're the ones gatekeeping, right? He goes, "But once I started doing some digging and realized that Operation Stargate was being controlled from an undocumented chain of command in Zone 7, I really knew something strange was going on."
Operation Stargate meaning?
The matter displacement technology, the devices that synchronize to each other from alternate timelines once they're running.
Okay, right.
And I'm thinking that's strange. Like, why would they be commanding that operation from beyond the ice wall, right? I mean, maybe compartmentalization. But that's just strange nonetheless. I say to him, "Look, where exactly are these bases?" He goes, "I mean, listen, I've never been to Zone 7. And as he pulls out a map of Zone 7 with every base marked down, he says to me, "Why don't you tell me?" And at that point, I'm just in disbelief, right? He's got this map of the entire unknown world that he clearly wasn't supposed to have. But with my jaw to the floor, I point at the uppermost part of it and say to him, "Why the hell is there a government base inside of the Dark Continent?" And as he thrusts the jet forward, he says back to me, "We're about to find out." At this point, we were well off into the region of the Dark Lands, no sunlight, and I say to him, "Look, you don't understand. This doesn't make any sense. The people of Panthea are dangerous. They're like a neurological weapon. If our government has come into contact with them, we've already bent to their will." And so he says to me, "Listen, you know the map better than me. Where is the base?" And I can kind of tell the area on the map of which I'd landed on this continent the first time. The base was roughly 20 more miles south. And so I tell him, "Look, start dropping your altitude. We'll see the base in no time." And buddy, look, the things we'd found out moments later. I mean, I could have never imagined. As soon as we land and get out, the agent I'm with recognizes a higher up who was approaching us. And he says to him, he goes, "Jimmy, you know about this place?" And he's just got a look of disappointment. Jimmy says back, he goes, "This is way above your pay grade, Middleton. You know you shouldn't be here." I cut them off at this point and say to the higher up, "Listen, this timeline is obviously beyond compromised. Like, what are you doing here? Let's leave." right? Let's use the matter transmission device to find a timeline where the Pantheons don't exist at all. And he just looks back at me like almost feeling sorry for me. And he says to me, they are in every timeline. There's no outsmarting the Pantheons, they're omnicognitive.
Omnicognitive?
The species can naturally communicate with each other interdimensionally in every timeline. There is no reality that's safe. They knew the Stargate was the only way for them to congregate across timelines, but they couldn't create it by themselves. Not without solar energy, not without sunlight. Operation Stargate wasn't created by us. It was created through us, by them.